60 JRPGs coming in 2023. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard that right. This video is going to be insanely long, so let's just jump right into it. First up, we have One Piece Odyssey, a turn-based JRPG set in the One Piece universe. The general plot is that the Straw Hat Pirates crash on a mysterious island. You'll need to collect your crew and then escape. Now, this game is being developed by Ilka that worked on Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, as well as Dragon Quest XI. So I kind of have faith in these guys that they can do something cool, especially considering how long it's been in development. A lot of these anime RPGs don't have long development cycles, but they've been working on this one for a while now. Also, there's a demo coming January 10th, so if you want to check it out for yourself, you can do that real soon. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, the action RPG set in the Dragon Ball universe, is coming to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Like most Dragon Ball RPGs, you'll relive parts of the story from the show and get into some awesome action combat. And this was developed by CyberConnect 2, the team that does a lot of the Naruto games, and these guys do really great action games, so I have confidence that if you haven't played this game, you'll probably enjoy this one. Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden are finally making their way to home consoles, and for Persona 3, also coming to PC. These will boast higher resolution and higher frame rates than their original releases. Now, in my opinion, I feel like Persona 3 is the weaker of the two games just because it has a lot of interesting elements when it comes to exploring dungeons and things like that, so I'll be really curious to see how it's received once it releases. The next entry in the Fire Emblem series, Fire Emblem Engage, releases January 20th. Now, the main gimmick for this game is that you'll be able to summon and fuse with past Fire Emblem heroes. Now, what's neat about this gimmick is that certain characters aren't tied to other past Fire Emblem heroes. You can kind of mix and match these rings and try out different strategies to see which one you like best. And much like in Three Houses, you'll have this huge base to explore where you can interact with your characters, train, eat meals, and all kinds of other stuff. Now, compared to Three Houses or even any of the other past art styles, this one is much more cutesy. And of course, we all have our thoughts on Toothpaste Sean right here, so I'll be really curious to see ultimately how this all plays out, but I'm really excited for this game. I love Fire Emblem, and I can't wait to play it. The next entry in the Neptunia series, Sisters vs. Sisters, is an action RPG coming out this January. For the story, Nepgear has to team up with friends to rescue game industry once again from the brink of destruction. Now, if you've played these games before, you know that they're tongue-in-cheek, pretty cutesy, and pretty funny. Now, personally, I've never really been into these games. It's never quite done it for me. The production value is just a little too low and doesn't keep me engaged, but I know it has its audience, and if you're in that, I'm sure you'll love this game. Labyrinth of Galleria: The Moon Society is the next dungeon crawler from Nippon Ichi. This adventure brings new quality of life improvements and over 50 hours of exploring alongside a cast of fully customizable companions to do your bidding. Now, I'll admit that I'm not typically the biggest dungeon crawler fan, but it does have a really great art style, that signature Nippon Ichi art style, not to mention a really beautiful box art, so this might be one that I check out. Digimon World Next Order is a port of the 2017 PS4 game. Here you'll be transported into the world of Digimon, and it's semi-open world, and you'll be able to collect the Digimon and fight with them. Now, the interesting thing here is that it has a real-time combat system. It's kind of like Ni no Kuni in the fact that it's real-time, things are happening, but you can also issue commands. Now, as far as I can tell, there's not a ton of new enhancements, or really none. It's just sort of a straight port, so if for whatever reason you missed it on PS4 and you want to check it out on PC and Switch, here's your chance. The Ryza trilogy comes to a close with Atelier Ryza 3, unless Gus wants to make a buttload more cash with a fourth game, which I wouldn't blame them. Here you'll be exploring a mysterious island with friends old and new. Everything you love from the Ryza games, from the alchemy, the turn-based combat, the exploration, everything is just turned up a notch, and it looks amazing. This is easily the most popular sub-franchise in the overall Atelier franchise, so if you've been waiting for this third one, I'm sure this one's going to be absolutely amazing. Octopath Traveler 2 seems to be bringing back the familiar formula of HD 2D visuals, 8 playable characters, and awesome turn-based combat. What I'm excited for in this one is that it seems to be set in a Wild West meets steampunk meets Edo-era Japan, and I just love the setting and love all the environments that they've shown so far. And the really cool thing with this one is that they've said they're going to have intertwining stories, which was pretty much the biggest complaint from the original Octopath Traveler, that they don't connect in some bigger story. The original Octopath Traveler was one of my favorite JRPGs of all time, and I'm stoked to get my hands on the sequel. Record of Auguras War, a niche PS3 60 era strategy RPG, is making a comeback on Nintendo Switch. It must have some kind of cult following because I'm not sure why there's fervor for a Switch port. I looked at the reviews and they were pretty middling, somewhere between high 60s and low 70s. Again, I'm not sure what the reason is or where this desire to port this game came from, but if you missed this game and you really want to play it on your Switch, you can get your chance on March 9th. One of the more unique games on this list is Matto Anomalies. This is a detective noir JRPG where you'll play as a detective exploring the town of Matto solving mysteries. And in between these mystery solving segments and exploring, you'll go to a separate dimension, kind of an alternate world, to partake in turn-based combat. If you're curious, I actually have a preview video on my channel and I got to play about 3 hours of this game, so if you're curious to learn more, check it out on the channel and see if it looks like it's for you. The conclusion to the Crossbell arc, Trails to Azure, is making its way west finally on March 14th. In the story, there's rising tensions in Crossbell and the surrounding areas, and it's up to your team to kind of quell that all down. Not much has changed from the original game. You'll have the same turn-based combat system, a lot of the same characters, as well as a lot of the same enhancements that came from the previous ports. Personally, I love Trails from Zero, and I'm super excited to see how this arc ends this March. One game to keep your eye on, and is a dark horse for JRPG of the year, is Loop 8 Summer of Gods. The game is set in a sleepy seaside town in 1983 Japan. It has a lot of Persona-esque elements where you'll have this sort of daily life as a high school student while also fighting monsters with your demon sight. I personally love slice of life style games like this, and I think Loop 8 could be something special when it releases this March. The Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection is jam-packed with 10 games, is making its way out west this April. Now, for those keeping score at home, I'm counting this as 10 games, not one game, so if you're wondering where the 60 JRPGs come from, 10 of them are right here. Now, if you've never played the Battle Network series before, imagine if Mega Man was a Digimon, and that's basically what you have here. In the game, you'll be able to customize Mega Man with different chips, essentially changing his loadout and how he can perform in battle. And a lot of the battles are kind of on these grid-based maps, and sometimes involve a lot of puzzle solving. There has been some updated visuals, although I know some people don't like that kind of washed out look. They kind of like the more pixel style look, but nonetheless, this game looks really cool. And for those who've never played the Battle Network games before, I would highly encourage you to check this one out. Imagine 80s era pro wrestling meeting a 16-bit turn-based JRPG. That's what you have here with WrestleQuest. As you can see, it has amazing pixel art, cameos from famous pro wrestlers, and some pretty cool looking turn-based combat. Outside of a few very short trailers, they haven't really shown a ton, but what they have shown so far looks amazing, and I'm super excited to check it out. Next is probably the most highly anticipated JRPG on this entire list, Final Fantasy XVI. In the game, you play as Clive Rossfield, a personal guard to the young prince Joshua. Now, in the game, a lot of different characters have powers of icons or summons, eidolons, guardian forces, whatever you want to call them in whatever version of Final Fantasy you're familiar with. Essentially, they'll turn into these different summons, and the ones they've shown so far are Phoenix, Ifrit, Shiva, Titan, and many more. Now, what gives me a lot of confidence that this game is going to be great is that it's being produced by Naoki Yoshida, the man behind Final Fantasy XIV Online's revival. Now, what's really cool is this is next-gen only, so the visuals and performance should be absolutely incredible. It's been a long time since Final Fantasy XV, and so I'm super excited to dive into a brand new story in the Final Fantasy universe. Trails into Reverie is the epilogue to the previous 9 Trails games, taking place 5 months after Cold Steel 4. Now, what's really neat is this game has something called the Crossroads system, where you'll be able to swap between 3 different main characters. Lloyd Banning's the main character from the Crossbell arc, Reen Schwarzer from the Trails of Cold Steel arc, and a new mysterious character named C. Now, if you're familiar with the more recent Trails games, it'll continue that same turn-based combat style and boasting a massive 50 playable character roster. That's just insane. I think it goes without saying that if you've played the Trails series, you absolutely shouldn't miss this game. From the good people that brought us Genshin Impact comes their next game, Honkai Star Rail. Now, I know it's technically a Chinese game, not a Japanese game, but I know a lot of you were excited about this one, so I wanted to include it. Now, instead of a medieval fantasy setting, this has a more sci-fi futuristic setting. And also, instead of it having action combat, it has turn-based combat. So if you love Genshin Impact, that game loop, the character designs, the art style, but want a more different setting and different style of combat, Honkai Star Rail is a game that you probably want to keep your eye on. What if Diablo had JRPG-inspired elements? That's kind of what I see here in Trinity Trigger. It's an isometric action RPG where you'll be able to try different weapons and get into a lot of action combat. Now, I don't have a lot of confidence in the story. It looks kind of low budget, but the gameplay could be pretty cool. It comes out in early 2023, so I'm excited to try this one out and see what it's all about. Valkyrian Arc Heroes School Story 2 is a fantasy RPG school building simulator where you take control of your own school in a fantasy realm. Here you'll take command of the faculty and nurture a unique growing roster of students. From there, you'll be able to build your school from the ground up and take on quests to make Valkyria safe once more. So if you want some sim elements mixed in with your JRPG, this is a game you might want to check out. Fairy Fencer F Refrain Chord is the sort of sequel to Fairy Fencer F Advent Dark Force. Here we'll have a brand new story, but instead of the previous combat style, it's going to be more of a strategy RPG. For my taste, this game looks kind of mid, not super high budget, not super interesting, but I know these games have their audience since this is, I think, the third game in the series. So if you're looking forward to this one, I'm super happy for you, and you won't have to wait too long to check it out. The Final Fantasy 1 through 6 pixel remasters are finally making the way to home consoles. Now, from what I can tell, there's no real adjustments from the PC or the mobile ports. They more or less look like the same games. And if you don't want them digital, make sure you hop on and pre-order that insanely expensive physical edition that's going to run you about $100. Nonetheless, if you really love these games or have never played them before and you've been patiently waiting for them to come to console, you'll have your chance this spring. Monster Menu: The Scavenger's Cookbook is a survival strategy RPG that combines exploration, tactical combat, and cooking mechanics. And it seems to be implementing that new 3D style found in the Disgaea games, as this is a Nippon-ichi game. As with most Nippon-ichi games, it has a cool art style, kind of a wacky sensibility, but for me, it's not really my kind of game. I love Nippon-ichi though, so I hope it does well for them, and hopefully some more people will be able to check it out. Rune Factory 3 Special is a remaster of the 2010 DS game. Now, when I heard that, I'm like, man, a DS game that's gonna look terrible on modern consoles, but to my surprise, the visuals looked surprisingly decent. It also looks like the character portraits were either upgraded or just completely redone because they look fantastic. So if you need your farming RPG fix and can't wait for Rune Factory 6, this is a game you might want to check out. Another game that I think is going to be a sleeper hit is Sea of Stars. This is the team that brought us The Messenger, and it's set in the same world. It has some gorgeous pixel art style with some amazing day-night cycle stuff going on. I don't know how they're doing that with pixel art, but they're doing some really amazing things with lighting. Not to mention the music is being composed by Yasunori Mitsuda, the composer for Chrono Cross, Chrono Trigger, the Xenoblade games, and many more. Now the combat system is also looking pretty unique as it's turn-based, but it has a lot of timing-based elements to kind of keep you on your toes. If this game isn't on your radar by now, it absolutely should, because this summer I think it's going to blow all of us away. The highly anticipated middle chapter in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy is supposedly coming out this winter. Now, I wouldn't hold my breath. I'm thinking it's probably going to end up getting bumped to early 2024. But hey, Crisis Core did make it out this winter in 2022, so you never know. In 7 Rebirth, it picks up right after the events of Remake, where the team defies fate and sets off on an unknown journey. I'm going to be super curious to see how they balance the timeline, see how they pull in all these different characters, and how close they stick to the original story and what new things they'll do. The other thing that's exciting to me is that it's next gen only for PS5, so again, it'll look great, it'll run great, and hopefully we can avoid all of those squeezing through tight spaces to fake load screens. Having just recently replayed Final Fantasy VII Remake, I am so excited for Rebirth and how they move this story forward and all the different ways they bring those old environments to life. Guns Undarkness is a futuristic strategy RPG in the vein of Valkyria Chronicles. It was recently kickstarted by Shoji Meguro. That's right, the Persona 5 composer who's going to be directing this game. Now, outside of the few short trailers, there really isn't much known about it and they haven't shown a ton, but according to the Kickstarter page, it's set to release in late 2023, so hopefully we'll get to know more about this game as the year goes on. Blue Protocol could end up being the biggest hit of any game on this entire list. It's an ambitious online action RPG collaboration between Bandai Namco and, weirdly enough, Amazon Game Studios. Papa Bezos seems to be bringing the money because this game looks like it has a huge budget. Now what's cool is you'll be able to create your character from scratch, design everything about it, as well as choose from a huge variety of different classes. And for those wondering, you can play this game in single player, or you can play with friends. Now, I know it was recently revealed for the West at the Game Awards, but this is a game that I've had on my radar for years, and I'm super excited to check this out when it releases later this year. The next entry in the long-running Disgaea series, Disgaea 7, is set to release in 2023. Now, it has a specific date of January in Japan, and while there's no set date for the West, Disgaea 6 came out 6 months after its Japanese release, so I anticipate Disgaea 7 coming out sometime this summer. The game seems to have an ancient Japan vibe, with the main character looking like a samurai with a lot of different ninja characters and things like that. Now, to be fair, they haven't shown a whole lot, but from what they have shown, it looks like more of the same. 3D visuals, wacky hijinks, insanely high attack numbers, and much more. So if you love the Disgaea series, look forward to this one coming out real soon. Euden Chronicle 100 Heroes is the upcoming Suikoden-inspired spiritual successor. And what's really cool is that it's being made from the original creators of Suikoden. From everything they've shown so far, it looks absolutely incredible. Everything from the gorgeous art style, the amazing animations, and the fact that you're going to have 100 heroes that you can recruit to your team. And it seems to have all the same aspects from those classic Suikoden games with a lot of modern niceties. I know we've all been waiting a long time for this one, and hopefully it delivers when it releases this year. Now, another game that I think could be a sleeper hit that I'm super excited for is Eternights. This game is described by the developers as, quote, a dating action game, blending a love story with adrenaline-driven combat as you make the most out of your life during the apocalypse. That all sounds pretty awesome to me. Now, a quick look at the gameplay. To me, I get a lot of Persona vibes, but with action combat and just being a little bit more over the top. So if any of that sounds exciting at all, you definitely want to make sure you check out Eternights. Literally announced today as of recording this video, Fate Samurai Remnant is coming in 2023. Now, they only released a very brief trailer, but so far what we know is that it's being developed by Koei Tecmo and it's going to be an action RPG. Now, personally, I don't know anything about the Fate series, so I don't know if this is some spin-off, some fresh story, or what, but I'm really curious to hear more as this game gets closer to release. Front Mission 2 and 3 remakes are coming this year to Nintendo Switch. Last year, the original Front Mission got a remake on Nintendo Switch and it turned out pretty good. Now, for my money, I feel like Front Mission 3 is the most beloved of all the different Front Mission games, so I think that one is going to be the one that fans are most excited for. The updated visuals and refined gameplay for the first remake were solid, and so I'm really looking forward to trying 2 and 3 later this year. Fuga Melodies of Steel 2, the follow-up to the 2021 Hidden Gem, is coming in 2023. It follows the same story and is more of a revenge plot and seems to be much darker, if that's even possible. It seems to be retaining a lot of the same strategy gameplay elements with a number of new enhancements and refinements as they polish based on the previous game. Not much else is known so far, but the original was one of my biggest surprises and a game I really enjoyed, so I can't wait to check this one out later this year. What else is there to say about Granblue Fantasy Relink? I feel like it's been on this list like 3 years running, and it's just time for it to release. Now, for those of you that may not be familiar, it's an action RPG based on the hit mobile game of the same franchise. And this seems to have a huge budget with a giant world, and it has an absolutely gorgeous art style. Not to mention a huge roster of characters and online elements, and you can play this game with your friend or solo if you want to. Now, as a little ray of hope, more info is coming on January 21st, and hopefully we finally get a release date. Legend of Nayuta Boundless Trails is an oddity from Falcom and is sort of a Trails side game. Originally released on the PSP, this is a Japan-only action RPG that seems to kind of pull elements and plays a lot like E7, another action RPG on the PSP from Falcom. Personally, E7 is my favorite game on PSP, and this obviously plays a lot like it, so I'm really curious to give this one a try, and I think a ton of people are going to enjoy this hidden gem. Imagine if you combine Pokemon with Stardew Valley, then you'd probably get a game like Moonstone Island. In this game, you'll be doing a lot of farming, life sim elements, and collecting spirits, just like you would in Pokemon. It has an absolutely gorgeous pixel art style with a lot of saturated colors that just demand your attention. And personally, I think this is a really cool mixture of gameplay types because a lot of the farming life sim games out there usually have action combat, so the fact that it's kind of pulling from Pokemon is really interesting. Not much else is known about this game, but what they've shown so far looks awesome. HD remasters of the PS1 classic Suikoden JRPGs are coming this year. Now, if you're somehow unfamiliar with this franchise, these are basically turn-based JRPGs where you collect a huge roster of characters to build up a base, and you have up to 6 characters in your party at a time. Now, as far as enhancements go, I think this is doing a lot of really cool stuff. From the trailers, it looks like the game's going to be full screen instead of just 4x3 and they have little things on the side to stretch out the borders. This looks full screen, which I love. Not to mention, it looks like it has some updated character portraits to really give it a nice polished look. Now, whether you've never played these games or you haven't played them in decades, this is a great collection and I think you're going to want to try. Sunnyside bridges the gap between tradition and modernism in this farming sim JRPG where you'll find harmony in the Japanese countryside. Now, kind of like what I just talked about in Moonstone Island, this is like a farming life sim game, but it has turn-based combat. Now, I'll admit, as I look at the game, the visuals aren't great. It seems like it needs some more polish or just some kind of extra flair to stand out. But what they have shown so far with the town and all the different characters, it looks really neat, and I want to learn more about it. Sword Art Online Last Recollection is sort of a what-if original storyline set in the Sword Art Online universe. Much like some of the more recent games in this franchise, you'll have the ability to play with up to 4 players online. Now, the developer is Aquaria. I'm not quite sure how to say that, but they don't have a great track record. They've been making the last few Sword Art Online games, and those haven't been awesome. Personally, I don't have high hopes for this game, but if you really love Sword Art Online, well, here's another game for you. Tales of Symphonia Remastered is getting a re-release this year. Now, from what I can tell, this doesn't seem to have a ton of new updates. It seems like it's just a straight port of the PS3 version, maybe just upscaled a little bit for modern televisions. Now, this is one of the most beloved JRPGs of all time based on the original GameCube game, so whether you're looking to play it on a modern system, you missed it on PS3, or whether you've never played it before, you'll have your chance to play it this year. Witchspring R is a story-driven RPG combining elements of collecting, simulation, puzzles, and battling. Now again, this isn't technically a JRPG because it comes from a Korean studio, but I thought it looked really cute, and I thought fans of JRPGs would want to check it out. Now, as you can see from the trailer, it has an isometric perspective and incorporates a lot of different gameplay elements, and if they all come together in a fun way, I think this could be a really neat game. And finally, the last game on this list is another one from our friends at HoYoverse, Zenless Zone Zero. Again, I know it's a Chinese game, not technically a JRPG, but I think people watching this video would want to know about it. Now, this is an urban action RPG set in the near future. According to the website, you'll live dual lives in the last metropolis. So I'm picturing, kind of living a normal life, but then getting into some crazy action combat, maybe some underworld dungeons, something like that. Now, whether you hate Genshin Impact or not, HoYoverse really knows how to build cool worlds with stylish action and great character designs. Personally, I really enjoyed my time with Genshin Impact, and I'm excited to see what they do here with Zenless Zone Zero. Now, if you want to hear about the best JRPGs of 2022, make sure you check out this video right here. Now, if you want to stay up to date with all these JRPGs and even more that I'm sure are to come throughout the year, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.